Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our friends in the Americas. My name is Andre Kassam, and I'm delighted to be coordinating this webinar this afternoon on the Digital Negotiable Instruments initiative. We're going to focus today on the use case for bank guarantees and look at the technology integration and how digital document technology integrates within front-to-back office processes. Last week, we focused on the DNI initiative from an introductory, an overview point of view. This week, we're going to focus on one particular use case indeed, from a technology side, not from a legal side. With us today, we have Sean Edwards, Chair of ITFA, providing the industry ambition on this initiative. I will then cover the approach, the planning, and the use cases. And Joel of China Systems will cover the bank guarantee, indeed, use case, and perform a demo of the integration of Enigio's trace original technology, which is the document technology, as integrated into China Systems Eximbills Enterprise. So that will be the bulk of the presentation, because indeed our focus today is about technology integration. We will take your questions on the go, so do not hesitate to use that for submitting your questions, so we can handle those indeed on the go. And you will also have access to the recording of this webinar as from next week from the ITFA website. So thanks to all of you who are joining us this afternoon. And let's start with Sean. Sean, over to you.
Thank you, Andre. You can move to the first slide. So good morning, I think, for a lot of our North American members. It's the second time we've done this today. The first time this morning was with our Asian members, our Asian community. So we're trying to cover all the different geographies. I think it's helpful, as Andre says, this is mainly about the technology, because ITFA is all about providing oven-ready, ready-to-use solutions. We don't spend a lot of time theorizing, except where we have to. But I think it's helpful just to step back a little bit and actually give you a little bit of the theory, some of the legal background. I won't spend too much time on this, but this we found was actually the biggest obstacle, not the technology. Blockchain is really suitable for what we're doing, and you know, I've had some really exciting afternoons and places like R3 and so on, going through how this could work as a matter of blockchain. But if we go back to when ITFA was founded at the end of the 1990s, we were already bringing together a community that had existed for quite some time. And this was the forfeiting community. So the tool that they used, and it had already been active for 20, 30 years. In fact, forfeiting really has been around for a long time, but was revived at the end of World War II. This community has been really active in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Used negotiations to open up the emerging markets. And why did they do this? Well, two basic reasons. Firstly, negotiable instruments are understood really across most of the globe, because generally the usual reason is colonial era laws. So either as part of British Empire or as part of efforts by the French, the legislation, and therefore the legislation for this, was passed and left behind by those occupiers. Now that meant that there was a great deal of standardization when independence came at the end of World War II, after the end of World War II. And so you have an instrument that's really understood and actually builds up on really centuries of mercantile practice. And the 1882 Act in the UK, although it seems very old, actually really brought together the existing practice that had already been around for centuries. And one of the questions we were asked this morning is, you know, you're doing a lot of stuff on the English, on trying to reform English law. What about the rest of the world? In fact, there's not an enormous amount of difference between the two main systems, the two main laws that govern negotiable instruments around the world. So that was the first reason. It was one of the few finance instruments that was recognized and understood and had a decent amount of pedigree across the world. The second reason is it was actually an extremely convenient mercantile instrument. A bill of exchange or a promissory note is an unconditional obligation to pay. That's independent of the underlying commercial agreement. So it means you've got a pure, in a very short form, you've got a pure sort of pure financial obligation. Obviously, the terms on which you're going to discount that, originate that, of course, that's something that you negotiate with clients. But the basic instrument, very simple and very robust. Now, the problem is that then at the end of the 90s, and as we came into the 21st century, these sorts of instruments fell out of fashion. The main reason is that they were heavily paper-based. Now, in fact, when you look at, and I'll explain a little bit about some of the work we've done, when you look at actually the law that underlies these, the reliance on paper is not quite as obvious as it might seem. But there is one problem that we came across, which really stopped the digitization of what we might call pure negotiable instruments. That's to say, documents that would have in digital form exactly the same value as the paper instrument. And that problem was delivery. So whilst you can write a negotiable instrument and you can sign a negotiable instrument digitally, electronically, you can't deliver it. So what the DNI tried to do was to look at this problem and say, well, what approach do we as the association trying to that represents the interests of its members, what should we do? So two things. We've come up with a functional equivalent, which you'll see, and it is basically a contractual solution to the legal problem. At the same time, we think that the highest form, the purest form of negotiable instrument would be something that exists digitally and is recognized by the law. But that law needs reform. I'll explain how we've done that. So there's an enormous opportunity here, I think, for banks and other financing houses to increase their origination and also to feed that into a very active secondary market. So forfeiting was about creating payment obligations, but those obligations were very easily transferable through endorsement, and that's what we are trying to create using new technology. That through the blockchain system is done through a change of control, and these instruments are actually very secure. There's a lot of frauds now that have hit the market because of the global pandemic. It's uncovered some very unsatisfactory practices, some big commodity frauds that I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that have gone on in places like Singapore. They're actually not a lot different from the frauds that took place 15, 20 years ago. And the reason for that is that the documentation on which banks have based their finance is actually still paper-based. So there would actually be increased security, enhanced security, if we were to move to a purely digital system. Of course, the question that's always asked then is, well, how enforceable are these new instruments? And this is what in the DNI we have partnered with Sullivan to give you a lot of comfort on the legal enforceability of what we're proposing. So if you can move to the next slide, Andre. So it's important to understand that the DNI, the Digital Negotiable Instruments, are digitally native. They are crypto assets, if you like. They are born and they live and they die on the blockchain for the examples you're going to see today. Importantly, though, what we're proposing as the functional equivalent is not dependent on any particular technology. So blockchain has a number of advantages for these kinds of instruments. They are, in my opinion, the best way of embodying them. securing them and transferring them, but there are other systems with which they are perfectly compatible. So as I said, when we talk about negotiable instruments, we want to create something that can be sold in a market. I sometimes describe them, bills of exchange and promissory notes, as trade finance mini bonds, because they are provided they're valid, they are a completely enforceable set of obligations in one very convenient container, which is another one of the phrases that we use. That container is in natural language, so it's human readable, but also very importantly, machine processable. Now, Enigio here, you'll hear from later, is one of our partners, but there are others that have created similar technology. And as I said, pains to point out, what the DNI paper has created is completely technology agnostic. The important thing is that when it is embodied in its digital form, it doesn't lose those key attributes of the paper-based document, as I've said, that it's independent and autonomous and transferable. Those are the important qualities that we're trying to reproduce, but just in a much more easily processable and more secure form. So there's a bit of legal technology that we've got in the paper, which Andre will speak about later on. We're still early days, I guess. This was launched 2-3 weeks ago. We're working with partners, two of whom you'll hear from today, to really get this out to the wider market. Andre, back to you now.
Thank you, Sean.
Let me just finish on this.
Yes,
sorry.
Maybe you can end with this one. Is very important one.
This last slide. Yes, indeed. So as I say, what we have in the DNI paper is something that is ready to go now using the existing technology, but in the longer term, we would like the law to be changed, and we have been lobbying the UK government. This is a response to a letter I wrote to the Ministry of Justice. It's a bit hard to read, but it agrees that change needs to happen and promises to work with us. We're also working with the Law Commission, as the quote there says. They are the body in the UK that promotes reform of existing laws. This will move, reasonably fast for a piece of law reform, but it won't happen this year, and it may not even happen next year. But it's a project that will take a couple of years. The question I'm often asked is, well, it's great you're doing something in England, but what relevance does that have to global finance? And I give at least two answers to that. The first one is that a lot of trade finance documentation is governed by English law. It's chosen as a sort of neutral law and a sensible mercantile law by many market participants around the world, even if they have no real connection to the UK. That's the first reason. The second reason is that here the UK can act as a bit of a pioneer, and about half of the world's legal systems, 40%, are in the Commonwealth. That's to say, they're based on English common law, and as I said earlier on, have a lot of the same laws left over from the 18th and 19th centuries. Sorry, the 19th and 20th centuries, not quite that old. The 19th and 20th centuries. So if they see the mother country, as it were, reforming the original law, they'll be prompted to do the same thing themselves, we hope. So there's very much a sort of ripple effect here, where the UK can be a pioneer. Andre.
Thank you, Sean. Indeed, as an introduction, we talk a lot about the legal aspects. Now, the key message of this session is that a common digital document technology can support multiple use cases where the legal complexities are very different. And on this slide, I would only have two, but I want to emphasize the three categories of use cases we have identified where digitizing originals can bring much benefits, even if the law is not changed. And as you see on this slide, the two first steps we focused on and we completed over the last 6 months since we launched this initiative in September at the annual conference of ITFA is all about document digitization and standardization of the container, not necessarily the content, but the container, and the digital negotiable instruments within contractual law. So with the electronic payment undertaking that are documented in the document we call a manual for digital negotiable instruments, and which we released last month. So those two phases are completed, and the final phase is all about changing the law, which might take some time indeed, but which is a destination. But we don't need to wait for this to reach this destination before we can enjoy the benefits of digital original technology as provided by Enigio, thanks to the first two steps. So basically, another way to look at it is how we can indeed use a common digital native trade document technology to for those three use cases. But first focusing on trade documents that do not introduce legal complexities. That's step one, for authenticating documents and making sure they are traceable, highly secure, and so on. Then when we want to use the same technology for contractual instruments such as the electronic payment undertaking as an irrevocable, unconditional, and transferable undertaking, we can use the same technology together with the ITFA EPU that we developed with Sullivan, and that is available to you. And those two first steps are actually bringing you huge benefits in terms of digitization and security of the instrument. And then the last step is all about the change of the law as you understood. So today we're going to focus on step number one. And with this, I'd like to hand over to Joel, who will introduce first and demo the use case for guarantees, which is a use case that Joel integrated within China Systems Eximbills Enterprise. Joel, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Andre. Can you perhaps change, because I'm getting an error here, you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing, so let me just try again. Yes, thank you, Andre. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thanks Sean and Andre for the introduction. It will be something entirely different. No more legal discussions anymore right now. It's going to be very much focused on operational stuff and also our strategic thinking behind what we expect from digital document technology. So this is an introduction to the actual demo. The demo itself will be a video actually. It will be easy to control time, taking about 16 minutes. But first I want to take you through a number of slides to at least explain our thinking behind this technology, how we see this evolve, and the second point, probably the most important thing, why are we doing this? What are the key benefits for the end users of documents in trade? So let's first start with the key criteria, because we are a part of ITFA. We started a partnership with Enigio on this, but first, of course, we evaluated the technology to evaluate whether we consider this having strategic value, because we can do a lot of developments on a tactical basis as a technology vendor, but for this type of technology set, we need to look at this from a strategic point of view. What's the reach of such a solution? Can it be more than tactical? There's many industry vertical solutions that solve this, but we wanted to look at something which we believe can be adopted across the entire trade industry. So the future-proof aspect of it and the easy adoption is a key element. With the ongoing digital standards initiative, it is clear that, in fact, the process of standardization is not, it is not a destination that we will reach. It will be an ongoing journey. It's called digital transformation, so it will take a while. So the technology had to be future-proof. It had to be technology that can evolve together with the standards. That was criteria number one. The second thing is that if you just look at how trade transactions are being processed today, SWIFT, of course, in the traditional trade space still plays an important role. There's at least around 8 to 10 blockchain platforms, not including even the domestic trade platforms that we're seeing in countries like India and China for domestic trade. So documents is something, trade documents is something that is being used across all those platforms. So you cannot take a platform approach in solving the challenge of being able to exchange documents across the globe. So the reach of the solution has to be cross-platform. And that's why I make the comparison with a physical courier service. Imagine that DHL or UPS or FedEx would say, well, we can only transport documents to recipients of documents that we first onboarded onto our platform and have signed an agreement with us. That would be a very bad strategy as a courier service. And what we are doing here, we're replacing physical courier service with digital courier services. So also strategically, you have to also think big and make sure you can reach as many people as possible. So it's unthinkable to take a pure platform approach. The third criteria is the result of actually being able to be cross-platform has some consequences. Because if you treat something inside a closed consortium or an ecosystem, yes, it is very easy to define your rules for the participants that you've onboarded. The moment you leave that platform, you know, what's happened to the document? So there is a challenge, of course, the moment you leave the platform, and that needs to be sorted. And the way to solve that is to create a neutral or a public digital notary service that can actually testify and verify whether a document is an original document, whether it has not been tampered with, and who is the owner of that document. So that needs to be a service that can be operated across all trade processing infrastructures. And I used a quote here from the latest ICC COVID report, and the data is actually coming out of a BAFT survey, which is referring to what banks are doing, being limited, of course, by physical submission of documents. They accept digital submissions, but there's a lot of phone calls taking place to actually call back the original sender and ideally try to get hold of the person who actually signed the document. If we really want to do digital documents at a large scale, we need to avoid having to rely on phone calls. You need a call center or a digital notary service, and that is what Trace Original provide. One of the key elements of the solution is this public digital notary service available 24/7 on the internet, where you can check whether it is an original document and you can actually create a proof of ownership of that document. Another criteria, and we're getting to in more technical areas, the solution needs to provide open standards. What we did not want is to work with a solution where a standard is imposed, because the reality is we live in a multi-standard world, especially globally and across industries. So we wanted to be able to actually use whatever standard we want, whether that is current MT, MT798, MX standards, EDI, whatever standard that is applicable, we wanted to be able to use it inside this technology. It should also not store the business data. And that's a key element, because the moment you start storing the business data, you're taking on much more responsibility than actually replacing paper. The solution that should only aim to replace the paper. And as Andre already pointed out, that's another important part of the solution. It provides a digital container. It stays out of the content definition. It lets the industry define the contents. And that's why it's possible. We started with a digital direct guarantee, but now we've got the framework in place. We can store an electronic payment undertaking inside. You can also start a distributed ledger payment commitment inside. It's a matter of using the digital container to actually get it from one trade document participant to another. The contents, of course, in terms of the contents is the part one, which needs to be configured, but obviously the digital document needs to provide also a configurable schema, because otherwise systems are useless. There has to be a schema that can be defined so that back office systems, portal systems all over the world, core banking systems are able to work with this data. So it needs to provide a configurable schema to enable STP. And in the case of Trace Original, it uses a JSON schema, which is an industry standard. An important one also from a legal point of view, since you're dealing with documents, you have to, of course, have the ability to replace wet ink signatures. So you need to be able to integrate the solution with electronic signature software, whether that is an electronic signature at an individual level or seals at a legal entity level. It has to be compliant with different regulations, and in the EU, it's called the IDAS regulations, but if North America or Asia, it has to have the ability to comply with those regulations. And in fact, it's agnostic, because Trace Original is not the digital signing software itself. It just integrates with signature software solutions. The bottom part is actually, and I'll try to be as brief as I can on this, but this is what the world is evolving, how it is evolving. It's very clear that the number of digital assets and digital documents, digital wallets, which are being created, that is increasing exponentially. And just like today, TCP/IP can be used as a secure protocol to transport data over the internet between devices, computers. In the future, this needs to be possible to transport data between entities. So digital identity, and there's a massive project taking place right now. Trust over IP Foundation is looking at this to create digital identities. And we also get to this because it all hooks into legal entity identifiers, which are already being used by SWIFT. So there's a lot of evolution on this, and this establishment of digital identity in the future will more facilitate technologies like the ones we're using now to act as medium to exchange digital documents. More user important, that's probably as a vendor, it's a major criteria as well for us when we develop a solution. If we integrate technology, it has to be 100% transparent. The users, if they do a guarantee, and I apologize, it's probably the worst business case for our North American friends. We've picked a digital direct guarantee as our first business case to prove the technology, but I know in North America you don't do the guarantees, but still, I hope the demo will be useful to show how we work with the documents. But it has to, like shown on this slide, there have to be very clear benefits for the end user. So whether we do a guarantee or a standby LC for that matter, via SWIFT or on paper or via a blockchain platform, for the user it should be irrelevant. He's doing his business. He's doing his guarantee, his LC, his standby LC, whatever. How it actually gets transported is not really relevant for the user. So that's our job as a technology provider, to camouflage that. I'm talking about the benefits. Let's quickly go through the benefits, what we consider as the benefits for the solution. An obvious one in current times: avoid dependency on physical delivery or scanning of documents. Scanning of documents, if you're well organized, you can still sort that out and scan everything and transport the scanned images to people working from home, all possible. But it is clear that it's a dependency in the future we should try to avoid, because it's blocking business decision, it's blocking important activities, especially if you're dealing with documents of title, documents which establish a payable or a receivable, like bills of exchange, promissory notes where commitments are being made which can trigger financing. You don't want to have dependency on physical versions. The second one, I'm repeating what I said before, but it's a crucial one: no need to join a specific network or platform to be able to participate in a digital document exchange. There are simply too many industries, inspection agencies, insurance companies, governing bodies, importers, exporters, the logistics industry, banks. To come up with a solution for that, you have to start from what works today and go for the lowest friction possible. especially for the end users. An important one that we actually paid a lot of attention to in the demonstration that we've made, we have to give the user a full digital experience. As you can see at the top here, this is an iceberg. What do I mean with the iceberg? The document, the digital document, is just the tip of the iceberg. It's more about the business processes that are being defined around the digital documents where the efficiency can be achieved. That's where you can optimize your process. And as an example in the demonstration, what we've done, because it would have been easy to create a digital document and say, okay, that's good, you've been able to prove you can create a digital document. No, what we've done is also we've modified the contents of the digital guarantee, because a good example in a guarantee is if you do a claim, and if it's a paper guarantee, typically for domestic business, if you do a claim today, you actually have to produce a paper claim and send it to a physical address in a specific location. You also have to return the guarantee physically, usually at the end, not all, if it's stipulated in the guarantee. At the end of its life, you have to return the original guarantee. In the digital world, of course, those clauses are meaningless because there is no physical instrument. So all of this is done digitally in real time, and the demonstration will make clear what we've done to allow that and to enable that. Another important point is, again, it will become clear through the demo, that in the digital world, banks will be interacting, also in this case, with beneficiaries or counterparts which are not necessarily customers of the bank. And you still need to be able to interact with them, and in a secure way. So it actually opens the door to provide additional services to non-customers. Yes, this looks a bit like a scary slide. I'm not going to go through the flow because the flow just illustrates what happens when someone creates a document, sends it to another party, and that party actually processes the document. I want you to focus on the colors. There's 4 different colors here. And it's clear the black colors are describing actually the processes related to paper, physical documents. Scanning, preparing mail, processing mail, and scanning on the recipient side, those processes disappear. The infrastructure, of course, in the case of a physical document, the infrastructure you use to get a document from A to B is a courier company which uses trucks, planes, automobiles, whatever, to get the document to its destination. The infrastructure in the digital world, again, we leave it as is. We will use existing networks. SWIFT, File Act can be used like banks do today to actually get a digital document from party A to party B. Blockchain consortiums can be used to act as transporters of digital documents, because our back office, we don't really care whether you have a connection into SWIFT or an API into Contour or Marco Polo or Comgo or WeTrade for whatever the consortium may be. For us, that is totally transparent. In our demonstration, I will actually use the lowest friction method of transport, which is actually an email. And you will also see what security is built into the process, of course. But do not forget, the competitor here is a piece of paper which is being put into an envelope, into a truck, and is presented at the door of someone, and you trust this person to actually be the destination of that document. That's the competitor. So I think to be successful, because everyone can come up with fantastic solutions, which theoretically sound great, but I think for a big challenge as documents in trade, you have to go for low friction. And this is what we consider the lowest friction possible. Enigio, the Trace Original solution, only focuses on the paper. It replaces the piece of paper. It does not care what content is put on the paper. It just replaces the paper. It's the same as the paper, but it's much better. Why is it better? Because it guarantees this. It offers the digital notary service, which is a website that you can access, which anyone can access, where you can actually check authenticity of a digital document, the data integrity, did anyone tamper with this document, and you can also verify signatures and ownership. So that's this neutral digital notary. I think, and then yeah, the orange boxes is what China Systems can do. So yeah, that's why it's no coincidence, the same but better. The better is also in orange, as you can see. So that's my introduction. Then we go into the demo itself. Just a brief very brief on this because I want to get to the actual video. The flows we will be demonstrating are the flows of a digital direct guarantee. So not a through bank guarantee, but it's a guarantee that will be issued. It will be Enigio acting as the applicant of the guarantee because they're delivering digital document technology to the Swedish government, the beneficiary. And Eximbills Bank will be the issuing bank that has Enigio as a customer, and they will issue the guarantee. We will also show the claim process, but it will become clear where we use the technology. So the next thing is the actual demo. And like I said, we've used the video to make sure we control the time. We've taken some shortcuts on certain processes because, for example, we use the same user ID for maker and checker. So don't think if there's ops people in there, you're just seeing one version of an operating model. To start the process, before we actually kick off the flow from the front end, we'll first show you how we define digital original documents in the system. And in this case, it's a digital guarantee. The system has got a configuration tool. It's our template build that we can use for any type of document. And in this case, I'm going to show you a template of a digital guarantee. Now, that same template, the contents of it can be used across Swift and across paper. Just some variables are going to be different. So this is our back office system here to avoid any confusion. So these are all the variables of the guarantee which determine the uniqueness as of the guarantee: language, the type of guarantee, expiry types, etc. This is the actual the text of the guarantee, the wording, and that wording goes into a digital one, a paper one, a Swift one, whatever. Formatting options will only be used for paper guarantees. You can map fields, any fields from the guarantee model into the text. So if you have existing guarantees, you can copy them from Word inside. When you make changes to the guarantee, as you can see on the right, the system has a track changes service, which allows us to monitor whatever the user is changing. We use this also between our portal and the back office for non-standard wording text, that the bank can see what did the corporate change and the corporate can see what the bank changed. So every change is tracked on the digital guarantee. The next step is that I'm going to close the back office and I'm quickly going to kick off the application process of the guarantee from our portal. I'm going to fly through this because the objective is not to sell our portal solution. This could be any competitor's bank portal, a multi-bank portal. We don't really care about that. Of course, we'd like to sell ours, but that's not the focus of this demonstration. I'm going to apply for the guarantee. I already apologize to ITFA because I typed in IFTA as the reference of the customer here, but you will see that it's the same reference on the back office. So $456,000, this is the wording. Templates are synchronized automatically on the portal. It's now sent to the back office. The back office will perform its workability checks, will do credit line checks, compliance checks. But the key thing here is on the contents of the guarantee. So on the dashboard, the user can pick up his guarantees. There was 15 digital guarantees to be issued. I picked the IFTA one. And all the data that was entered on the portal is now available. That's standard. Any solution will do that. And as you can see, the issuance category, it's direct to the beneficiary digitally. This will manipulate the output. It's not Swift, it's not paper, it's digital. Enigio, and we will contact the Swedish government through an email address. The wording is there. And when I'm happy with all of this, I'm simply going to confirm this and first accept it, of course. Now the transaction is pushed into the next queue. It will be pushed into the supervisor's dashboard, which is also visual. If you click on the guarantee bar, it will show how many guarantees there are from today. Green is there's one from today. The other ones, the yellow ones, the orange ones, and they also get red if you're really late. So that was the supervisor release, and now I can go to the issuance step. I can go to my 360-degree function, and I can from anywhere pick up my guarantee, type in 1047, and call the issuance process based on the workflow. It will display all workflow options. The green check marks on the left indicate where the tabs are complete. The pies indicate you've missed some fields, so the user knows immediately where he needs to go. He can review the other things, but here I'm going to take a shortcut and say defer the charges so that they're picked up by a batch process which will collect commissions from the applicant automatically. For the PDF diehards, people still love paper, we're going to give you a PDF view of this document, of this guarantee. It is not the original. The original will be a digital version, but as you can see, you know, this is our bread and butter, generating PDF documents, correspondence, but any type of templates we define. And like I said, we could create a bill of exchange here, a visual display we can do. Yeah, on this document we just call our templates to visualize it, but the real digital document is actually the digital original. Again, I confirm this. It will go through supervisor release again. And then it's the first time that we will use our APIs that we have in place with Enigio's Trace Original solution. I can release it from here, sort by new, pick up 1047, pick my supervisor release. The blue boxes indicate the fields that were modified in the last step. So the supervisor, to avoid that he has to check every single field, we highlight what changed since the last time, instead of having to review the entire contents of the transaction. If I confirm this, at this point the API is executed. So we're creating a digital guarantee on the Trace Original node. And any moment an email is going to appear, because what we do at the same time, we send a notification to the Swedish government. So hereby they are notified of what Eximbills has banked. We've received instruction from the applicant. This is the reference. Please review this guarantee. If you accept it, you can request a secure transfer. So that's what I'm doing now. This is actually our digital document viewer. It's a secure URL link. It's not inside the bank environment. And because some people think, oh, is this a portal? No, it's not the portal. This is just a secure URL token link which only the beneficiary can access. So you can review all the details of the guarantee. And here, as you can see, we're using some smart new things which you don't have in a physical piece of paper, URLs to automate the claim and to automate return of the original guarantee if that clause is included in the guarantee, at least, because not all guarantees specify that. Just like on a piece of paper, you can review the entire wording of the guarantee, just like you're looking at a scanned document. I'm going to do the transfer here. What happens here is, if the Swedish government says, yes, I'm okay with this guarantee, they provide their public key, which everyone can know, to the issuing bank. And the issuing bank will embed the public key of the new owner of the guarantee inside the instrument, so that the result is that only the owner of the corresponding public key can prove to the notary, I am the only legal owner of this document. So this is the confirmation that the ownership has taken place. Instead of using a courier, boom, in 1 second, the document has now become the ownership of the Swedish government. And they can again use our doc viewer. We're connected here to the doc store via a secure token. You can review the entire gesture like you're reading a piece of paper. You can make, if you want, you can make a print screen. You can do what you want here. You can also download the document and we'll show that. Some people don't show it because it's like viewing a SWIFT or viewing an MX message, but I'm still going to download it. I want to highlight here, written requests need to submit it via the URL provided in the guarantee terms. That's important because that's the second part of my demo. I'm going to do a demand request or a claim. Or under an LC, it could be a presentation. Actually, conceptually, the same thing. So I'm going to download to give you an idea for what does this digital document look like in a raw format. This is the raw format. This shows the structured portion, the one that we use for STP purposes. So also corporates and banks can fully integrate the structured data into their back office, is what we have done. You can also read the guarantee wording at the bottom. That is just human readable. Yeah. It's, of course, I recommend you to use our doc viewer in the background. It's a bit more user-friendly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the claims process. And again, from a bank's point of view, the bank wants to be sure if someone does a claim, how do I know that my claiming party is actually entitled to do that? So that's why Trace Original provides a proof of ownership capability. And we will use that secure proof of ownership to actually give access to the claim form. So I'm going to create this proof of ownership now. You need to do two things. We could use an API, but I'll show you how it's done manually. I downloaded this file, this Trace Original. You saw that notepad file. I'm going to drag and drop this here. It first confirms this is indeed an exact copy of the current digital original. If I would have typed a space in that file, it would have rejected it. Yeah. So it's confirmed it is a real digital original, but it says it's a copy. Why is it a copy? Because multiple people can have a copy. There is only one real original, and that original is controlled by the private key of the one holding the document. So the Swedish government is storing a private key in its own environment. They only gave the public key to the bank. Here I'm entering the private key, and the private key is actually the key to the kingdom, because that is allowing you to create the proof of ownership. Yeah? Anyone who understands about PKI infrastructure, public-private keys, the private key, no one knows it except, in this case, the Swedish government. So I'm going to create this proof of ownership, type in some details, which will be mapped into the proof of ownership. And it's that proof of ownership that I'm going to use to open that claim form. You will see that in the next step. So this is the proof of ownership. This is a Trace Original digital document as well. All the functions you see on the left, we can actually call via APIs. I've done it manually here. So now I'm going to drag and drop. This is the proof of ownership at the bottom. Yeah, the file generated by Trace Original. I'm now going back to my claim page, which says, show me your proof of ownership. I need some authentication for me to allow you to do that claim. So I'm going to drag and drop this proof of ownership file onto that web page. And it immediately will verify this proof of ownership via the notary. The notary has said, yes, I've authenticated you. And then you have access to this business data entry. So here we can do smart things because it's a unique token which actually gives us information about this transaction. You see only transaction number 1047 appears. The fields you see on the screen, it's something I forgot to say. As everyone knows, SWIFT delayed the guarantee and stand by SWIFT standards release of 2020. The system you've seen on the back office and on the portal and what you're seeing here is already compliant with SWIFT 2021. We're not going to change that. We keep that because we prefer to work with structured data. Whether we have to use old SWIFT formats, we don't really care about that. We can map that into an MT760 today. But at least this form that you're seeing here for the guarantee experts in the audience, SWIFT has generated a new message, the MT765, which allows you to do a claim under a guarantee. This is actually all the fields from the MT765. It's actually fields which are meaningful from a business perspective anyway. So yeah, I could have typed, I wish I typed a bit faster, but there's we can do checks here. Probably something which I forgot to explain. I tried to type in 1 million, and it indicated in red because the system knows, this page knows what the maximum claim amount is. So it can prevent you from doing things based on details inside the business transaction. Also some account checks. This is my account. They should be paying me to advertise their name here. So once I'm ready with this claim form, I'm going to submit this claim form. What happens is it will generate this claim form in real time on my back office system. And as you're supposed to do in the digital world, our system, our back office system immediately will say to the non-customer, provide him the service, yes, we've received your instruction, we've received your request, we will be verifying this and come back to you ASAP. So this is the service. The email is being generated back to the Swedish government. We acknowledge receipt of your demand. This is work, I'm amazed. Our guys from our trade service unit, they managed to do this in the last week to get this demand notification there. So I'll get back into the back office. I'll show you now what's happened with this claim in the back office. And it shows how much of the process of digital. I'll first do an inquiry on my back office transaction 1047. So that's the reference of my guarantee. And you will see there has been 5 events normally if all has gone well. The first step was the portal application. The second part was the process. And as you see, there are actually 3, or what I would call them RPA, robotic process event, because we fully automated the interaction with Enigio's Trace Original solution with the portal. That's been done in full STP mode. The last step of the demo, and that's the last step in the process, we've got more to show, but I wanted to stick to 50 to 60 minutes, is to show you where is the demand. The demand is automatically pushed in a queue for the person who's actually responsible to process claims. So we've generated automatic claim record, and the user can just review the claim request. All the data is there. On the demand details tab, you will see the amount that was claimed. It will also show the reference, the presentation details, the statement, the demand statement, and then the user can take his decision. What is he going to do with that? Refuse it, pay for it, extend the guarantee, or hold it, which means then the looping between the correspondence with the applicant and the beneficiary will start. That was, I think, what we can show you so far. Like I said, it's a small snapshot of what we've done in 15, 16 minutes, but we can organize more detailed sessions with people if you are interested, but I'll stop my demo session here.
Thank you,
Over
Joel.
to you, Andre.
Thank you, Joel. Amazing. And this shows how technologies need to integrate. Definitely, this is about integrating Enigio's Trace Original technology, which is focusing on the digitization of the document, as you have understood by now, into existing processes. And I think that's where the value of those highly specialized fintechs is demonstrated. Here you see on this slide the various technologies that can be integrated. We are focused today on Joel's work at China Systems to integrate the Enigio's original document technology, but the same can be applied with other front-to-back core trade finance technologies. Finastra is also an ITFA member. The same can be applied with other fintechs that are highly specialized, like StraightStream for processing the documents internally and checking the document according to the ICC rules. Also platforms on the export funding side or on the sales finance side, the buyer finance, as provided respectively by Finion and Levanter. They're using also promissory notes or bills of exchange today on paper, and the digital process that we introduced, we shown at the beginning for negotiable instruments, can benefit from the same technology Joel presented you in the case of guarantees. So I think that's the key message here. Is we are not here to introduce a new platform, a new ecosystem, a new way of working. We're focusing on reusing what is available, vendors, channels, SWIFT, email as well, bringing to you a digital document solution based on DLT. And DLT here is used in the way that no business data is stored in the DLT to make sure you're compliant with the data privacy rules. And that is also embedding some digital signature technology as provided here by Signicat or could be provided by others. So this is the key message. Technologies integrate, technologies can then be wrapped with the right legal framework, contract law based or common law based, and by doing so, different ecosystems, whether you're exchanging your flows over e-banking, over SWIFT, over a future blockchain initiative or a tokenized trade ecosystem, as we highlight with TradeFinex here, all of those ecosystems, which are usually quite closed. Even the SWIFT one is very closed. You can't exchange a SWIFT message with an institution that is not on SWIFT. And the same applies often for the new blockchain ecosystems. All those ecosystems are closed for good reasons, no issue with that. But then you need something to enable interoperability, and that's where the Enigio technology acts as the container of the information. I don't see any questions so far. Unless some of you have questions, feel free to raise those through the chat. Do not hesitate. If you don't, then feel free to download more information from the Enigio website on Trace Original. So some white papers are available, as well as the new manual of digital negotiable instruments that ITFA released last month, which provides all the work that we have done on the legal side in order to combine indeed the digital negotiable, the digital document technology with the appropriate contractual legal template for negotiable instruments. So with this, I'd like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Do not hesitate to get back to us, to Sean, to Joel, to Gunnar, or any member of the DNI initiative. We're looking forward to benefiting from your feedback, questions, and we will continue to share information on the progress of this initiative. Mainly, our activities mainly are now on further technology integration, but also on supporting the early adopters. With this, I'd like to ask Sean for your final words.
Yes, thank you. So thank you to all of you who have joined us today. I think what we've shown you is a very powerful instrument. It's easily integratable, so it's ready to go. As Andre has said, there is the phase one that we have succeeded with in producing the contractual functional equivalence for negotiable instruments. But as you've seen from Joel's demo, the technology can also be used with other instruments, and there's some work that we'll be doing with other associations to standardize more of these trade instruments. So the important thing is there's a valid in this manual, you'll see two templates for valid contractual equivalence of negotiable instruments. We work, as we pointed out, on changing the law long term and trying to achieve the gold standard of having an even simpler negotiable instrument in purely digital form that will be recognized by the law. That will take a little bit longer, but in the meantime, you can benefit both from what we've done and from the various vendors such as China Systems and Enigio. And so again, thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andre. Thanks, ITFA.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.